Is this on? Yes.
Okay. Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to our panel today. This is the largest group we've had at Blue Collar Post Collective West so far. And we're really Yes, no pressure. It's fine. We've got some really amazing panelists here, and I just want to make a couple announcements really quick before they get started. First, if you're in LA and you're not on the live stream, or if you're on the live stream and in LA because you didn't want to get dressed today, our next meetup is March 18th at St. Felix, and we're switching it up because we have also grown so much at our meetups. We're going to be using the back room at St. Felix instead of crushing ourselves into the powder room. Yeah. So you might be able to hear each other when you talk. Next, we're in the Sim Group LA, and they provided us food and snacks and this live stream. And so I just wanted to let you know that they are doing some free educational events themselves called Sim Lab about once a month. The next one is March 24th from 4 to 7. It's going to be about red helium, and they're going to do camera, color, and workflow demonstrations. And all of our events are always free, but please consider a donation to the Blue Collar Post Collective. We have a program called the Professional Development Accessibility Program, which we help people that are low income in post-production go to educational events, conferences, things that will help them further their career that they can't afford otherwise. Right now we're taking applications to send someone to NAB, and we're taking applications for that until February 28th, and you can see that on bluecollarpostcollective.com. And if you're in the audience or you're in the live stream, if you want to join the chat on YouTube or tweet questions at #BCPCWest, we will send them to Ashley, and she'll incorporate some of them into this discussion. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Okay. Thank you, Kylie. Okay, so I'm going to go through my questions. So first off, I would like to welcome everyone to the panel about assistant editing and scripted television. We'll also kind of go over a little bit of mostly just scripted in general. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley McKinney, and I'm an assistant editor. I work mostly in independent film, but I have an interest in scripted television, because who doesn't? I am also the co-host of the Cutaways podcast, where myself and my best friend Justine, who's right there, talk about romantic comedies. We watch them in chronological order, we evaluate them, we talk about Patrick Dempsey's hair, an assortment of wonderful things. And if you haven't heard our podcast, be prepared. I will giggle and probably make a Hamilton reference or two. But enough about me. I want you guys to have a chance to introduce yourselves as well. We can start at the end.
It's on. It's on. Is this thing on? Hi, my name is Sharon. I grew up most of my life for 14 years in Israel, and in Israel you choose majors in high school, which I think is really smart. And so I majored in theater and media studies, and that's where in media studies I learned how to direct and produce and shoot and edit, like bad VHS high school movies on really old premieres. And that's where I kind of discovered that I really want to edit. And then I made it my business to get into the Air Force filming unit, because you have to serve in the Army as mandatory in Israel, so I made it beneficial to me to learn more about how to edit in the Army. So I edited tutorials and instructional videos for the Air Force on like how to take apart an F-16 engine and put it back together. Fascinating stuff like that. Circles around bolts and nuts and things. But it was great because it was 2 years of hands-on experience on Avid, where they just, let us make real products for real clients who really have no idea about anything about filmmaking, which is very similar to the real world, having clients you have to explain things to and work with and collaborate with. And it was really great experience for the real world. And After that, it was kind of like my film school. I worked for E in Israel, Channel E. They have a branch there. I did some local celebrity news bulletins, and then I packed up and moved to LA. Worked in reality as an assistant editor for 3 years. Worked my way up in each different company. Got to junior editor. I started editing sizzle reels and pitches for future reality shows. And then I swerved out of that and into indie films where I wanted to focus on scripted editing. I had a great editor mentor me on a low-budget indie. Did one or two more indie films, and then I swerved again into scripted television, and here I am. Take it away.
Follow that up, Richard.
Have you done instructional videos for the Army?
I do stuff with moving pictures. I'm Richard Sanchez. I'm an assistant editor. Started in reality. Actually, I started in cell phone video before the iPhone existed. So it was like one frame a second. It was very
Assistant
interesting.
editor hipster.
Yes, I am. Started in reality. Made my transition to scripted. Currently, I float between feature films and scripted television, and that's where I am.
Hello, I'm Monica. Excuse me. I actually just rushed here from work, and when I'm done here, I'm rushing back to work. I have been in this business for about 12 or 13 years. I did not go to film school. I discovered I wanted to go into the business quite late, right when I was about to graduate college, so had to kind of figure things out from nothing from there. But for the first 10 years of my career, I actually was an offline and online editor for various types of television shows that was all non-union. And then about 2 years ago, I wanted to take my career in a different direction, and it's very hard to break into scripted, so I decided the best course of action for me was to take a step back into assistant editing, and I've been kind of going nonstop ever since. Your turn.
Oh, my turn. Hi, everyone. Well, first, thank you to Kylie and everyone in BP, all the Collective, for having us. I know I can speak on behalf of you guys, considering you've already spoken. My name is Josh. I'm from New Jersey, and I've been fighting that war for a long time. And so there was a magnet school in the county where I grew up in New Jersey, which is right near the shore, the fabled shore, and it was all communications. And when I was about to go into high school, my mom said to me, "Hey, you should take this test," because they took a couple kids from each town. And she said, "You should take this test. It's not even a full school yet. I'm sure they'll let you in." And I did, and they did. And one of the things we had to do initially was make a short video about the town that we were from, because all of the kids came from all over the county. And I remember vividly shooting this video about various landmarks in my town, and realizing that I could take the seal of the town and spin it at the screen like the Batman logo and record a little doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle. And it was in that moment that I realized I really wanted to work in post-production. Fast forward some number of years later, and I moved out to LA about 6 years ago, and have been sort of orbiting various aspects of editing. I started in a trailer house, and I've worked in features, and then I went and worked in scripted television, which is why I'm here, and kind of been bouncing back doing that ever since.
Nice. All right. Well, my first question is probably going to be the one that I hear the most, which is just, how do you get into scripted? But I want to make that more specific, because I feel like that is such a broad question for people to ask.
You would be correct.
Yes. But it's the most common. So I want to ask, what were the specific steps that you took to get into scripted? While working in reality or doing other things, like what did you do to make yourself more available for scripted, I guess?
Okay, so I think one of the most important things that I did was retain my scripted editing, or like keep editing scripted even if it's the worst, and find young directors in film schools who need editors, you know, and I did a few shorts for people like that, friends and people who know people, to, you know, on the side while I was editing or while I was assisting on reality. That's one thing. And then the other thing is I applied for the ACE internship program. Even though I already worked in reality and I wasn't going to get the internship, applying alone really benefited me and opened me up to, you know, this great lecture series that they do. And also I met a bunch of wonderful friends and colleagues who I later either worked with or got work from, and still meet them, and they've become great friends. And it's like a film school community, or, you know, your friends who studied with you, we kind of grow up together, and that's been great. The third thing is, it's the hardest thing, is the mental change in your brain to stop assisting on reality when you're ready to transition. You have to, every person's situation is different, but you know, I saved up a lot of money. I worked hard on this job, saved up a lot of money, and said to myself, this is it, this is the last one, and then say no to all the other jobs that come later, and sit at home and just network and do your homework and reach out to people, and you know, it all pays off. I mean, editors are a lot more friendly than people think. You know? It's like, you know, you can actually Facebook, like my first big mentorship with a big editor was off of a Facebook message. So, you know, but it's the biggest part is the mental change to stop. It's easy to take one job after the next so you stay employed, but, you know, you gotta actually, you yourself have to do it.
For me, as far as what I did and what one can do to transition out of reality into scripted, is there's a lot of prep work. In my case, what I did was I reached out to every scripted assistant editor I could find, because we've all heard that reality is a little different from scripted, and scripted is a little different from features. And the problem with that is, that's great, you know it's a little different, but not that different. But the real problem is you need to know how it's different, and in what ways it's different, what makes it different, so that when someone's interviewing you, you can say, yes, I know exactly what to expect, and I can anticipate the need, and I can get the work done. Some people are of the opinion that in an interview, even if you haven't done something before, you should always just say, yes, I can do that. I've never been of that mentality. My mentality, however, has been, if you prepare for it, you can at least honestly say, I've never done that, but I've researched it, and I know what needs to get done. I can make a phone call to someone else who knows, and I won't slow the project down on account of my ignorance. And there's nothing wrong with your ignorance, or one's ignorance in that situation, because you haven't done it before. Why would you know how to do that? And that's fine. Like Sharon has mentioned, you know, most people are a lot friendlier than you might think, and it's really valuable to be bold. Via Facebook, if you're a guild member, you can go to, you can search members and find their email addresses. The worst thing that's going to happen is you'll annoy them for 10 seconds and they'll forget about you. And the best thing that might happen is you might get a conversation going. You might not get a job out of it, but you can have some really valuable conversations with people that might lead to really valuable insight. And who knows, it might lead to work, you know, and at the very least, you'll make a friend out of it, which is, I mean, everything we do is about relationships, so that is how you'll build your network of people in scripted. It's one of those things is how you originally got started in reality TV, is you started with nothing, and it took a little bit of momentum to get it going, and the same thing is going to happen if you want to work more union jobs. You need to know more people who work union jobs. If you want to get more scripted work, you got to know more people who work scripted work, and so, you know, obviously events like these, you know, even websites that people don't use, like LinkedIn, because who uses that? You'd be really surprised who does, actually. I've talked to a lot of editors and had really great conversations that way, too, just by saying, hey, I'm an assistant editor, I love what you do, you know, and, you know, one piece of advice is, of course, never lead a conversation with, I need a job. But, you know, my mantra has always been friends first, and it's generally worked very well. Anticipating the need is the biggest thing, and above all, just be kind. Be kind to everyone you work with, because, you know, the thing is, even in your reality shows, a lot of reality editors you work with either have worked scripted before, or jump between scripted and reality, or know people who do. And if you can stand out in people's mind as, the thing is, as far as being able to do the work, everyone knows you're able to do the work because that's why you didn't get fired. But are you the person who also has the mentality, the attitude, that person's pleasant to be around. I want to spend 14 hours with them, being remembered as that person who gets the job done, but is also just a good person to be around. That's the one thing I can't stress enough. And for me, my first scripted opportunity came, it was actually kind of a fluke. It was a friend of a friend who needed someone, and they were pretty skeptical of me, but it worked out because at the time it was a Final Cut show, and they needed a good Final Cut assistant editor, and Final Cut has its share of limitations, and it's just one of those things where I was kind of I was in the right place at the right time. I got lucky with the interview. I kind of have another mantra, which is good luck will get you an interview, knowing how to do the job will not get you fired, and being kind will get you asked back the next time. So if you keep those three in mind, it will be somewhat of a waiting game. You'll need to wait for your opportunity, but being kind and knowing how to do the job are the big ones. So.
What could I possibly add to that? I could add a little bit. So my situation is a little different because I have 2 kids. I put off pursuing scripted for a long time because I was making really good money as an editor. I was working constantly, and I have children. And right now I'm not seeing them very much. I'm working a lot, but I had more control over my hours. And even though I wasn't actively trying to get pursuing scripted, I never really stopped pursuing it. So it's building up that network of people, and sometimes it could take years, but you just need to plant those seeds, go to events, go to mixers. You never know who's going to be there. The person who gave me my first scripted assistant job had known me for 2 years, and I started up with a conversation with him at the Edit Fest that was 2 years prior. And nothing happened right away. He didn't offer to hire me, but 2 years later, he asked me if I could recommend any assistants because he was looking for someone, and I recommended myself. 2 days after that conversation, he offered me the job. It came out of nowhere. I had no idea it was coming. I was actually being offered 2 or 3 editing jobs and reality work and documentary TV work, and I turned them down to get into scripted. So you never know when the opportunity is going to come up for you, but you need to be ready, and you need to increase your chances for that opportunity to happen by just, speaking to people. Shadow as many people as you possibly can, and just ask the questions. No question is a dumb question. When people shadow me, I assume it's because they really don't know what it's like. So I don't think any question is a dumb question. I did not know what a continuity was until I had to do it because the other assistant got sick on my first job, and I had to ask the co-producer how to do it and apologize in advance for asking him stupid questions because I had never seen one before. So, don't be afraid to admit that you need help learning this type of knowledge. That's why you shadow people, and we know it. I invite people to come and shadow me if they want, as much as I'm allowed to. And not that many people actually take me up on the opportunity. So that's something to also remember. For all the people who come up to me and say, hey, can I keep in touch? Maybe I can shadow you, ask you questions. I'm like, great. Maybe 2% actually follow up. That gives them better chances. Actually, Deb was one of them.
It's awesome.
Deb
She followed up,
over there.
and Deb's right there.
For
She's
those of
working
you-
on the Fosters now.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy for her. But I met her when she was in reality, and she was just someone who came up to me and was like, hey, how can I keep in touch with you? And of 30 people, 1 in 30, she was the one. And she's working in scripted now. I didn't get her that job, but I helped her as much as I can by letting her shadow me. So don't be afraid to make those connections with people.
I concur. But in, everything that you guys have said is true. But there is also this thing where I've been to a lot of these, and I've never spoken to one before, but it's in this moment that I will say there is an element of luck. There is an element of luck involved in this entire industry, and we all sort of know this, right? But this idea is, like these guys have been saying, is you need to put yourself in a position where when that luck occurs, you can seize the opportunity and push it through to the finish line. I mean, I can tell you that I got my first scripted job because I went to a doctor's appointment and my doctor's husband was the first assistant editor on features, and she said, "You're from New Jersey, what are you doing out here?" "I want to work in movies." "Oh, here, let me give you my husband's phone number. He'll probably love to talk to you." "No, he'll probably hate talking to me, but I'll call him anyway." And 6 months later, he wanted to cut an ultra low budget feature, and I was working as a PA at a trailer house, and he said to me, "This is going to be 4 weeks worth of work. It's non-union. There's a chance it could become union. I know that it's not a lot of security, but this is what you do. You jump off the diving board and you just hope that the ball continues to roll." And then it did, because like Richard was saying, I did good work, I wasn't a dick, and I would, put myself out there and pursued him. There was a moment when I kept emailing him and calling him, and he fully acknowledged that he was not going to respond to my emails. He just straight up said to me, "I'm not really good at responding to emails." So I started to call him at his cutting room, and then there was a moment when he left that show, and I called the cutting room and I said, "Hey, can I talk to this guy?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he's not on the show anymore." And then I said, "Can I have his cell phone number?" And then they gave it to me. And then I called him, and
Shady.
yeah, and then I called him, and he didn't react in a he said, "Wow, that was really forthright of you to ask that question." I mean, that was a moment when I could have just said, "Oh, well, I guess he's gone now," and then the ship sailed away into the sunset. But I was a little stalkery about it. And here
That's
you
a
are.
fine line to walk.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, it really is no different than reaching out to somebody on a social network. I mean, in the sense that, like, all of those avenues are great avenues, and I've done exactly like you guys were describing, and look up through the member directory, or read an article about an editor talking about their process and finding their email or their LinkedIn or whatever and emailing them, because they love to hear that sort of a thing. And whether it's praise or just questions, a lot of people in our field, most of them don't get the kind of notoriety that everybody in front of the camera does. And it means a lot to say to someone, "I really appreciate the work that you do. Let's have some coffee."
Being an editor is really hard, politically speaking, just beside the cutting aspect of it, and so they really love being appreciated for their work.
But that, I mean, as a final note, I would just say that there is an element of luck, and once you acknowledge that there's luck, it's a matter of putting yourself in as many positions where that luck could occur as possible, and being confident in yourself and your abilities to take those opportunities when you roll those dice.
Don't worry, Josh. I'm right there with you on the borderline stalker.
Yeah.
Not really. And let's add a little disclaimer. Don't be too stalkery. Yeah, nobody likes too stalkery.
Like one message at a couple of months, just one.
Just pace yourself.
Yeah.
And just some more advice when you're I actually tell people don't email me, because I get like 1,000 emails a day, and it's gonna get lost, or I'll be like, "Okay, I'm gonna flag that. I swear I'll respond back to it," and I forget. It just gets buried under 300 emails in an hour.
You have
So
to
I
get
always
it
tell
through
people,
board.
like, Facebook message or like Twitter direct message me, and if they're not on either of those platforms, so I was like, "Then I'm sorry, then I'm probably not gonna get back to you. Like, you need to be on those platforms to like network with people." So it's I'm sure you guys are. I'm in a really busy time right now. It's like when we're really busy working long hours, it's just like we barely have time to breathe. So don't take it personally. We're not being mean or hate you. It's really, we're just so busy. It's hard to respond to all the messages right away.
I say that to my mom a lot. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, my
She
mom's in
emails
town
you.
this weekend, and I'm probably not gonna see her because I'll be working.
Oh, that sucks.
That's okay, she's playing with kids.
To complement your story, though, Josh, is so basically I applied to the ACE internship program and I didn't get it, and I saw the lecture series and there was this big, awesome editor talking, and I got to introduce him because they divided it up between us, and then we became friends, and turns out, and I'm from Israel, turns out he's half Israeli. His dad is from Israel, so he was before I really got to know him, he was in Israel visiting his family, and he gave a lecture in a film school where I learned After Effects in Israel. And so I was still on the distribution list, and they said, oh, this big editor is going to come talk with us. And I said, hey, could you hook me up with his details? I want to contact him, you know? And like before actually, sorry, I confused the story a little bit, but before the ACE internship, and they said, oh, he's on Facebook. So I messaged him this long message in Hebrew and waited a month, and I saw the scene and nothing happened. And then I was like, shit, like you said, does it go away into the darkness, or do I, so I sent it again. And then he said, sorry, I don't know Hebrew. I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense. I mean, his name is kind of Hebrew sounding, and was lecturing in Israel. I assumed, sorry, my bad. But, so I wrote a huge message. I translated the whole thing in English, and he invited me, and we chatted, and it was great. And then we stayed friends for a while, and then I saw him again at the lecture series, and we stayed in touch, and he always like, what are you working on? What are you cutting? Show me some stuff. He was really cool about it. The fact that I was already cutting short films for film students helped me because I had something to show him, and something that's not reality that he can, kind of relate to and is interested in. And the whole reason I got the first job from him, I didn't message him about, hey, I need work, yo, I just, he said, what are you working on? Show me something you're cutting. And I sent them the first rough cut of a student's short film that I did. And it was right at the time where he was working on a very low-budget indie that he really believed in. Big editor, but working on a low-budget indie. And his usual first assistant wouldn't take the low pay rate. And he's like, oh, hey, by the way, I need an assistant starting Friday. Are you available? Hell yeah, I'm available.
Yeah.
I was working on a corporate video. I quickly found a replacement for that. I worked, and that gig was for over a year. That indie film, because there was a big hiatus and reshoots and insanity, and then now he's like, a good friend and always recommends me to whoever listens, and it's great. So I cut short films on the side at home. I had something to talk about and show people that's not me asking for work, and also harnessing my cutting skills. Slight stalker tendencies. He calls me pro stalker, but that's exaggerated. But, and following up. Like you said, there's not a lot of people follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, my first independent feature was very low budget, and it was my lead assistant editor in reality sent it to me and was like, I can't take this, maybe you can. And the editor really liked what I said in the interview, apparently, and I got it. So that really is how it works. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of luck. And stalker tendencies, I guess.
No one talks about the stalker stuff. I'm really glad that we got that. It's only weird if you let it be weird.
I feel like I've had an ex-boyfriend tell me that before.
I'm sure the editors at the earlier panel today wouldn't really talk about
Yeah,
this.
you're not going to hear this at Invisible Art, Visible Art. They're not going to say, be a little stalkering.
All right, well, I know a couple of you had mentioned going to film school, so I want to talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people go to film school, but I don't feel like it completely prepares you for being an assistant editor. Like, I've heard people not know the difference between online and offline, because that's not something that they discuss. So does anybody have anything that they wish their school had kind of covered a bit more, if you want to talk about it?
I wish my school taught film. I went to UC Irvine. We had film studies, but we didn't have a filmmaking department. I was actually a theater major, and I was 1/4 away from graduating my degree in theater. I was going to be a lighting designer, and in my last quarter, a friend said, "You should take an editing class." And I said, "Why would I ever do that?" And I decided I was going to throw away my entire major, and I finished because it was a quarter away, but I was no longer interested in lighting design, didn't want to be an actor, and got every single book I could find on anything. And I mean, outside of film school, there's a wealth of information if you just look for it. I mean, with websites like creativecow.net, with Facebook forums, Adobe used to have their classroom in a book series, which I used to read, and no one took me seriously because that was 8 years ago when no one cared about Premiere, and now it's pretty valuable. So, I mean, and just in my experience talking to people from film schools, there's a variety of things that, you're just not going to quite get, and it really is, but again, there's almost no such thing as insider secrets nowadays, and with social networking, it's pretty easy to get in contact with people. Again, to the effect of being stalkery. I mean, you watch your favorite show, you see the list of editors and the assistants, and just like reach out to them and say, "Hey, wow, that," and especially having something specific to talk about. Like that episode had an amazing visual effects montage. Were you behind that? That's incredible, and people will generally respond to you, buttering them up a little bit, and so.
Okay. Well, then I guess, what is the typical day of the assistant editor for you guys in TV specifically?
The typical, I guess it depends what stage we are in the process.
There goes Monica.
Monica, what was your day like today?
What, Monica?
What is your day going to continue to be like shortly after
How
this?
do you feel about this?
I feel like we all looked like that too. Like we just go home and do that.
The truth is, editors are often the therapists of the directors, right, or whoever.
Yes.
And assistant editors are a lot of times the editor's therapists. So the assistant editors get all of it on top of each other. At least in my experience, I had a lot of sessions with editors.
I actually took, now that I work, this actually probably factored heavily. I took a social psychology class when I went to college.
I have a science degree in psychology.
Hey, and
handy.
it's the emotional quotient of any office. The only offices that I've worked in are cutting rooms, but of any office there is this emotional quotient, right? So the political, the way that you talk to people, the way that people talk to you, the way that you're present, the way that you're not present, knowing when to leave the room, knowing when to say something, can vary a lot, period. But, I think that's important, but it's not something that you can really teach or talk about. You sort of just absorb it every single time, right?
Okay, well.
Well, you've got the degree, come on!
Okay, well, typical day.
Okay. All right, cool. That's fine.
Depending on the shows that aren't so crazy up against air dates and deadlines, usually if you're in dailies, you'll get your dailies in, do whatever you need to do to get those ingested. Depending on the show you're on, you might be actually syncing sound and backing up to LTOs. I haven't worked on shows where I have to do that because I just have too much shit to do. We have a dailies house that does that. Thank you, Kylie. I've been with Kylie on Colony. But you're prepping your dailies for the first part of the day, and then maybe you'll go to, if scenes are cut, start working on putting sound design in, or depending on which editor you're working with, because each editor is different. Maybe you'll be helping with some music as well. There's also dealing with the paperwork that comes in and creating your continuity, because that is a pain in the ass to build. And that's kind of a typical day during dailies on, just a standard regular schedule show. When shows are busy, you will get dailies, and then you will get pulled off of dailies because you need to do outputs 5 minutes ago to various departments with various watermarks for various reasons and various split tracks. Then you might have a turnover come up for another episode randomly, and turnovers are when you give everything either to like mix or music or online. And that actually takes a while to prep depending on what state your show is in. And then you also might have to do some sound, you might have to address notes, you might have to deal with visual effects. What else can happen in one day?
Oh man. Maybe like the PA called in sick and you have to like bring around the lunch orders to everybody. That happens. It
Not
doesn't.
on my shows.
It happens on my shows. What else?
Yeah,
Visual effects.
I've had all that stuff, by the way, happen in one day. That's when you're looking at 14-hour days.
Monica's badass, you guys.
I am not the only one who does that. Every assistant I know in scripted does that kind of stuff when they just get on the crazy. I guess all pilots are like this as well, and I'm not on a pilot. But yeah, I've worked on multiple shows that are like this. And so what you have to do there's nothing you can do to be prepared for it except know how to do things, know how to deal with time management. I have a priority list. Actually, I always request a big, huge whiteboard. And every time something comes in, no matter how small, and it could be coming from 5 different people, things they need, I'm going to write it on that board, because then I won't forget it. Because trust me, if you're like, oh yeah, I'll remember that, you're going to forget it, because you're going to be asked to do 20 more things before you even get to that. So it's like being able to have a to-do list, set your priorities, and just find the fastest workflows to get things done. I'm constantly looking for faster workflows. I think you teach and post about workflows a lot, don't you? Yeah, Richard does that a lot. I think I've seen things. I mean, that's how you get through those days. And I think that has nothing to do with assistant editing, but will allow you to get those days. Do not eat the candies and bagels and donuts, because you will crash and not be able to get your work done.
You just need to have more coffee if you do that.
I don't drink coffee.
Well,
I
that
don't
sounds like a
have
personal
caffeine.
problem.
I eat really healthy snacks, and that has been able to get me through the rough times. And I'm tired, but I'm not lethargic. Like, I have energy, I'm just kind of mentally exhausted, but I'm still able to get everything done correctly, and it, starts over the next day.
Yeah,
That's on the crazy shows. They're not all like that.
Well, for me, I know my AP, which is associate producer. Yeah, associate producer. My associate producer on Vice Principals she and I had an ongoing joke that when shit would start hitting the fan, I would go in my room, close the door, and start listening to Hotline Bling on loop. And I would do this for, I kid you not, 4 hours. And it would just be Hotline Bling on loop. And it really centered me. And it really allowed me to just kind of sit there and say, okay, so I've got my priority list, which you're 100% correct.
You need to
You have
write
a
it
notebook,
down.
whether it's a notebook or a whiteboard or something that you are writing down, all the things that you need to do. And you've got the stuff in front of you, and then being at a standing desk is really nice because you can kind of like groove with it. And you look at the list, and you look at your Avid, and you look at Drake's smiling face, and you say to yourself, I'm gonna kill this right now. And then you just take it all down, and it's great. Find your Hotline Bling is what I'm doing.
I use Hercules Go the Distance.
There you go.
That is the best song.
That's interesting, because like I would go 0 to hero because I would want to keep going.
The 90s button, the 90sbutton.com.
Yeah.
Yes, that's just a bunch of 90s.
You've got to, I mean, like, I think it's having some sort of thing that helps you, that drives you, and keeps you focused. So you can feel like you're making that progress and you don't sit there and get really overwhelmed, because that's something that can easily occur. When you're getting pulled away and added on over and over and over again, something to keep in mind is to let those people who are requesting things of you know, I've got this stuff going on, where does this sit in the list of priorities? Do you need it now? Because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Does this come first and whatnot? And maybe sometimes they won't know, and you'll kind of have to use your own little internal machinery to figure that out.
But it helps keep you from getting yelled at.
Yeah.
If they don't know and they can't tell you what's more important, well, then it's going to go in the line.
Yep.
And that's why I like having a big whiteboard, because as soon as they walk in my room, they're like,
Do you say talk to the board?
oh, you know what, I'll come back. Which is what happens a lot.
There you go. Then you don't even need to say, right, they come in, they look at the board, and they're like, oh, she's really busy. We should go.
Do you guys use like a triage system to go through your priority list, or do you just go from what comes in?
What do you mean by triage?
Well, in
'Cause I do-
hospital lingo,
Yeah.
what is the most emergent thing? Like, what's the
Right.
biggest emergency?
If production's waiting on something, you better get that to them fast, because crews are expensive, and so are actors.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If production crews are waiting, why did they wait to talk to post to get something the day of?
Yeah.
That's unfortunately a problem that's gonna be incredibly
I
common.
have no
promise-
comment on that.
I promise you will all experience it. There is no good answer. You just gotta deal with it.
If a big hotshot wants to see something who's not really that connected to the show, and is just, you know, hey, Brad Pitt wants to watch this, then everyone's gonna haul ass to get to put the best foot forward.
I haven't had that issue with.
You should start cutting military videos for
What was typical on my last show, we were a very heavy visual effects show, and we didn't have a visual effects editor. So a very typical day for us too was it was a half-hour show. We probably had anywhere between 50 and 100 visual effects per episode, which for that time is a pretty good amount. So we had to be pretty strict also on scheduling visual effects review sessions, making sure our editor knew what was coming in, what was yet to go out, and if any changes were made, were those new visual effects being flagged and then being turned over to the visual effects artist. That was a really big part of that show. And the other thing, kind of touching on Monica's point about not getting yelled at too, the one lesson I've learned by getting yelled at a lot, never ever go into your editor's room without a notepad for any reason. And it's easy to just, hey Richard, come here right now, great, grab a notepad. He's gonna ask you something, write it down, because if you have to go back there in 5 minutes, what was that thing you said? One, they're probably not gonna remember, and two, they're probably gonna be cranky.
And if you have your email on your cell phone, bring your cell phone too, because there's many times it's like, oh, did we get that thing sent in the email? And it's like, okay, I'm like, hold on, and I'm pulling up my phone, pulling up my emails. That's what I do.
On the OA, we found Slack to be very useful. I know there's some controversy. Some people don't want to be chatting with the dude in the room next door, But it's nice for me because that we'd have separate groups, the group that the producers have with the assistant editors, and the group that the editors have with their own, and the group the editors have with the assistant editors. So everything is and everything's logged, so I can go back and see. Oh, I did this, I did that, I did this. It's kind of messy because it's a chat room environment, and there's memes and shit everywhere. But, it's helpful. I think the combination of Slack and Trello, which is like a group bulletin board, is also, if you're more into online stuff versus physical, stuff. But, combination of both. Notepad, very handy.
We used AIM on Vice Principals. When I was being interviewed, they were like, "Do you have an AIM account?" And I thought, "Well, yeah, from forever ago." And then I remembered the 4-digit password because it was when passwords only needed to be 4 characters. And then I changed it, so don't go trying to hack into my AIM account.
Did you use Hotmail email account?
No, just AIM. It was so odd, So that's how we would communicate in the office, as well as face-to-face, etc. But there were times when that transcript saved me, when I could go back and either tell an editor, yeah, this is what you said to me some number of hours or days ago, or this is the version that we were working on, or whatever. Having that written record that's in a semi-searchable form with less...
Between the GIFs and
well, there's no GIFs on AIM. The best things you get is the emoticons. There's not even like a crying happy face on AIM. It's just regular happy face. There's only a certain level of emotion you can express.
Just
Crying
crying.
happy face?
Just
Yeah,
crying
like the
assistant
tears of joy
editors.
happy face.
Tears being animated.
Yeah. And then more recently on the feature that I'm working on, the production was in Rome, and there was an assistant there, and we used Skype, which has a lot of great emoji. But yeah, there's you should have multiple lines of communication that you can search whatever works in the environment. Every environment, I feel like, it has a different way of communicating. Monica, do you guys, what is your chat client of choice?
Right now, we are using GChat, which is really
Solid.
annoying because it comes out through our speakers with that loud ding.
Oh.
And it's just like, oh god, I gotta turn those
You
down.
could turn that off.
But the thing is, if I turn it off, I won't ever know that they're contacting me because I'll have my client.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
But they have some pretty cool pictures in there too, little things, like things that look like comic book bubbles.
Yep. Did you know if you type /shrug, it makes the shruggy?
I think I got something with congrats that like threw confetti.
It's the little things in your chat clients that make your day.
Yeah, you can tell how challenging the show is by how delirious everyone on the crew gets and how silly and inappropriate our lunchtime conversations get.
Do you guys, I know some people that make work emails for themselves. Do you do that, or do you use your personal email?
I started with my personal, because that's what was on my resume, and so they just added me to all the distro lists, and now I think I'm gonna switch to one that's just for work, because I have a million emails in my inbox, and I'm running out of space in Gmail.
I'm a big fan of the Google Mails. I color code every show I'm on, so I know if it's red, it's the good place. If it's purple, it's this movie. It's so. And actually, I like having it in my personal one just so I can reference old shows, because I find pretty frequently I'll have a problem that I had 2 shows ago, and I'll be like, and also having subcategories with those Gmail accounts. Like I'll have one just for the show, and then I'll have one just for visual effects, one for just sound effects, one for just for turnovers, and then that tends to be really handy for what was that thing 2 shows ago that we had a problem with.
I've used that for spec sheets.
Yeah.
You're gonna go back to the same vendors. I was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have their spec sheet.
Google Drive, I put like old spec sheets on there and avid user files and stuff, I am really not as organized as you are with Gmail. I just use Gmail and try to sort things into folders when I can, and when I can't, it's just gets in there and I search. I just use the search and But Gmail can hold a lot. I mean, I guess if I'm on I think at some point I go like 5 years back and then I start deleting I go on a rampage of emails, deleting. But that's it pretty much. I don't use multiple emails to answer your question.
What was the original question?
Oh no, this is
This is a typical day.
This is typical day.
See,
We tried to get off on psychology and politics, and then you took us back on typical day. This is what happened.
This is what happened.
Typical day is gonna go very late tonight.
I like the wordplay in that.
It should be a typical night.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Well, touching on workflow, do you guys set up a specific workflow for each different television show, or is it kind of you sit down with your editor and go through that, or is it kind of across the board the same?
Well, there's more than one workflow. There's the workflow
True.
you have with your editor. Then there's the workflow for when you have to do all your turnovers. There's the workflow with getting all the various outputs and watermarking done and getting those encodes done as fast as possible. There's visual effects workflow. And they're all different. And with the editors, if you're with the same editor, that'll pretty much be the same. But every editor I've worked with they've had some similarities, but I've had to adjust to major differences. Just people are different. You need to adjust to it. And I mean, generally, like my dailies workflow that I do for myself, it's like I have my own folder, and it's like that's my folder. The editor is not allowed to touch it. It's mine. And,
But they can if they want to.
Well, they go in there, but they're not.
Yeah.
They don't try to tell me you should do it like this. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, I'm gonna do it like this. You go back to your seats. But yeah, as far as like visual effects workflows, changes every show. Depends if you're doing it. If you have visual effects department or just one visual effects editor, that's something you have to work out. On shows that are long running, they have established workflows, and even if they're dated, sometimes politically it's not smart to rock the boat and just go with their dated workflows. I try to, on this last show, they were out, because I was the third team on, And so they had started doing outputs a certain way, and it was taking a while. And I was like, actually, there's this really great workflow that I've been using that will cut that time by a lot. And everyone switched to that workflow because it was just faster. So it just depends. You try to bring a lot, and when you can, you try to optimize what's been done. But every show, I feel like we're always kind of figuring it out, depending on the needs of the show.
I find in general, I consider it my job to propose the initial workflow, but ultimately it's what the editor wants. And it's also important to note, even if what the editor wants doesn't seem efficient, or even if it actually isn't efficient, it's really about accommodating what they need anyway, so it's kind of up to us to make it work. And there are different ways of making those all come together, kind of like how Monica was talking about. You'll have a workflow going between visual effects, between your turnovers, and especially with things like naming conventions tend to be very unique. And what I'll try to do is, if I have several vendors that have differing naming conventions, that can get really confusing really fast. So I'll try to contact my vendors and say, can we unify this into one unique naming convention? That way I can convey it to my editors so that I'll say, look, if I ever have this colored marker with this name in it, that means it's a visual effect marker. So just kind of be aware that if something changes, maybe you can let me know. And of course, it's always our job to try to catch that stuff. But a way to kind of corral that all together, and it varies again from editor to editor. It's always a little different. It's all about adaptability.
So yeah, from editor to editor, and because every show is a different constellation of vendors, then that changes everything too. Also, when you started on the process, if you're the main first assistant or if you're joining an existing team, I've joined this existing team on Fear the Walking Dead, and I just followed what they did. On the OA, I was the first assistant editor on, so I got to have my say in which Avid we were using, even though they didn't go with Avid 8, but they wanted us on 6.5, which is like the most stable supposedly. And then the editor, yeah, I know. And then I wanted 8. The editor said 8 is buggy, so we compromised on 7. But then, I got to, while dailies were just starting to be shot and we still had some time to set up, I was there to be able to establish a workflow and kind of determine, okay, this is how we're doing this. And I had a cool idea that I wanted to try on my next show about how to do a slate differently than with Title Tool. I was like, you know what, I'm tired of all this stupid title media everywhere, of the titles that keep changing for the slate, and I found a way to kind of automate it using bin columns and timecode generator. If you care about that, ask me later. But that ended up, and then other assistant editors joined me, and everyone loved it, and we used it the whole time, and it was great. And I don't think we have a single Title Tool slate the whole time for 9 months. It was great. I'm just nerding out, but yes, little things like that. I mean, it depends which stage you're on and who you're working with. And in this case, we were with a bunch of indie film editors who don't give a shit what kind of slate we have. And, I just let them do their thing and find my way to do mine. And that's it.
You mentioned Avid crashing all of the time. Do you guys have a checklist that you go through when you're troubleshooting, or do you have a team that kind of helps you with that?
Reboot.
Have you tried turning it off and on?
Actually going behind the hardware right now, I think we have the new Blackmagic IO, but the nitrous, and just unplugging the power and plugging that bastard back in. Because you can't just unplug the wall switch because the ABC switcher turns on. And also deleting your settings. That's another thing you do.
Always back up your Avid settings.
Yes. Yeah, always back them up. There's a way to cheat. If you have to create new settings, there's a way to cheat from your old settings. You could open up the old settings and just pull certain parameters over, like your keyboards. So you don't have to completely recreate them, but don't tell IT that, because they'll just tell you, no, it needs to be from scratch. I'm like, that's what you think. I don't have time for that. Yeah, I mean, those are the big things of this, deleting all of the settings, including the Avid settings, the project settings, and the MC states doesn't work, and rebooting, and, unplugging the machine doesn't work, then I'm calling IT. And they
I call
will
IT
replace-
first.
IT asked me, they're like, have you done this, have you done that? And it's like, if I could just say yes,
Yeah.
they won't come until I've done all of that stuff.
I just say yes. But then I do that stuff in the time it takes them to come. So then it's not a lie. One time though, I wasn't getting any audio out of my Avid, but I was getting it out of the computer. And I tried everything.
Unplug the hardware.
I unplugged everything, I plugged it back in, and IT came, and he was like, oh yeah, check this out. And he pressed the on button. And there was like a little breakout box for the audio specifically that I had never seen before or noticed that it was there, and I must have kicked it or something. Actually, it was like the door probably hit it, and he was like, oh yeah, it happens all the time, don't worry about it. I was like, I'm that guy that didn't
Did you
press
miss
the
the
button.
computer? Did you hit the computer and hit the button instead?
No, the computer was on the other side,
Oh.
which I did kick. I did not kick the computer. Shout out Pivotal Post, you guys are the best.
Well, do you have a favorite error message from Avid?
I hate all error message equally. I don't know because
They
when
tell
it,
me nothing.
yeah, when it happens, when it crashes, I'm never looking at it and thinking, oh, you again, consistency check failure or segment fault. I just say I crashed. I text my editor. I just crashed. You should save. And then,
I'm a big fan of the flamethrower error because that's exactly what I want when I see that.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I haven't seen that either.
I think it was with the Mojo and the Adrenalines. It was a hardware
Oh.
issue.
I've seen the PMS and the STD ones, right? And there's the elusive error 2034 that no one online knows why it happens.
Well,
it just
now,
happens.
when my Avid crashes, it just the dialog box, oh, Avid has crashed, would you like to send a report to Avid? It's like, screw you. I don't care.
The first gig that I got here in LA was working at a trailer house, and I'd sent them my resume, and the person from HR called me up and said, so do you know anything about Mojo? And I was like, what is this HR person talking to me about? Like, Avid boxes for? And I was like, yeah, I know how to use it and how interfaces, etc. And she's like, no, Mojo's the name of the company. And it was the name of the trailer house. She didn't care at all about Avid. I thought that was funny. You reminded me.
That's what I did.
Well, mine was when I was a night assistant editor, and I had this random error from the Blackmagic card that was in the HP computer, and it was the bad magic error. And I was like, is Voldemort coming? Is he coming to take us over and just kill our Avids now?
Speaking of Voldemort, do you know that there's a hardware error called the Hagrid error?
Oh my god, is there really?
Yes, it's a common one. So someone knows that one.
We're such nerds, you guys.
You know what, Hagrid?
You could say anything. I would believe you that it's an error.
The engineers tend to
Yeah,
have
the
a
Kurt
computer.
Russell error.
Oh, yeah. Bob, that Bob.
So during your typical day, as we've gone through.
Oh, we're still on that question?
No, we're still there. We're still in a typical day because there is no typical day, guys. It really is different every day.
Every day is a winding road. That's been stuck in my head since we started talking about this.
Which we accept that there is no typical day is the least possible helpful answer, but it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Which is also really liberating though, because it's kind of nice to wake up in the morning and not know what's going to happen when you get into the office. Because you can't really stress out too much because you know that you can. Yeah, you're like, I'm just going to walk in and all this stuff is going to happen and then I'll deal with it. And if I have to listen to Hotline Bling for 4 hours straight, so be it.
It can actually also be really comforting to know, like, I feel like everybody on any show, because I've probably done this on every show I've ever worked on, has said, this show is so crazy and nobody works this way and this makes absolutely no sense. Every show is that way at one time or another.
Yeah, every single show, this show is not typical. it's just unique the way they're doing it. It's like, yes, you're right. You and every other snowflake falling from the sky.
And you never know when you're gonna get to like do some temp voiceover and suddenly be in the, be playing from all the edit bays. There's your voice, which is weird, but or you'll get to the other two assistant editors had to go riding around the parking lot really fast so we can record some like fake sound effects of like cars revving and stuff. It's just and like the creators are with the editors and they're trying to figure something out, and the best thing you could do is, again, stalker tendencies. Listen kind of if you can, if you're nearby, kind of if you happen to hear what they're looking for or what they're struggling with, and you go and you run to your Avid and you can find that shot that they're talking about that they really need or that they could really use for the thing and kind of sneakily send it to the editor. That's almost a promised invitation.
I don't know about you guys, it's not, I do this, and then I saw the show working across the hall from us, the assistant on that show do it too, which is just get right up to the door, put your ear on the door so you could hear what they're saying
Stalker
inside.
tendencies, man.
And it's true, because you can kind of get an idea of what's going on in there, and you can prepare.
And on my show, we had like a weird setup where the editors were the inner room, and the assistant editor was on the outer room, and so the editor had to go in and out of our room to get out, and so the director would be sitting in there, and the door would be like a crack open, and they'd be debating in there, and I'm hearing their debates, and I'm looking for the stuff. And then later the director's like, don't think I didn't see you, like, finding those shots over there, so they clock you. So it's great for your future, because they know you're on it, you know what shots they're looking for. Maybe you'll cut for them one day,
Well, I think that's like the biggest advice that I ever got was learn how to anticipate, because it's going to be the most useful thing when you're sitting there trying to anticipate what the editor needs, what the director needs, what the producers need, because that's mostly what you're constantly going back and forth dealing with.
And even in reality, like I had a post supervisor say, we can't use this music vendor, the music library, delete all of their files. I'm like, are you sure? Really? You want me to delete all of them? Really? Yes, delete them all. We need them offline so the editors can't use them. So I hid the media files so that they're offline, but I still have them. And guess what? They did an agreement. Now they're like, put them back in. I'm like, well, if I deleted them, we'd be in a bit of trouble, wouldn't we?
That's when you've just bought yourself a nice long break, when you're bringing them back in. Time management is a big thing, and that's an excellent way.
Yeah, I've gotten some pretty comfy couches, and I close the door, and I'm like, rendering.
No, I worked with an editor once. So I was working in features, and then I came into scripted television through a friend of mine who needed an assistant, and I was just finishing a show at the time, and I was really tired of this stigma of, oh, you've only worked in features, or you've only worked in unscripted, or you've only worked in X, Y, Z, and I would go for these interviews, and the people interviewing me would say that stuff, and I would get really frustrated, because I know, and we all know, that technically it's all the same as much as it's all different, but this idea that because you've only worked in scripted that you can't do unscripted, or vice versa, or features in television, whatever. But anyway, that was a roundabout way of saying it's all the same, and diversity is great to have, and working in a bunch of different things, we've already established that they're all unique. But anyway, what I was getting at was that the nap thing. I worked with an editor once.
Fond memories of the
Yeah, I worked with an editor once who would say, hey, I'm gonna lie down and close my door and just take care of anything that comes up. And I was never comfortable enough to do that, but I did take care of anything that came up. It was great. Sometimes, that's a thing sometimes,
Yeah,
though.
sometimes
But,
I know a guy who would close the door and do some yoga.
yeah.
You need we're living in our workplace, so, don't do it in the wrong times where people, are under the gun and there's huge deadlines. I'm not sure Monica's going to be doing yoga anytime soon.
I have a balance board and I have a mat that
There you
allows
go.
me to stretch.
There you go.
Yeah, but you figure out the right times to do it.
No,
But-
I stand at my desk and the mat has grooves so that I can
So there
stretch
you
while I'm
go.
working.
She, queen of
Time
efficiency.
management. You want to find the most efficient way to do these turnovers? It's while you're stretching.
But we need to keep, mental health in check.
Yeah.
And, take the walk to the water cooler. On the OA, we had the water cooler really, really far away, so it was like a group trek to go get water. And,
Yeah,
we were like, you're going to the well.
Every morning, even though, I know I'm gonna have a long, busy day, no matter what. I'm usually, I have to drive my kids to school and then come through traffic to go to work. And so I don't always have a chance to eat breakfast at home. So I will just get to work and I will just sit in the kitchen for 20 minutes, enjoying a breakfast, reading a comic book, and then I will start my day 20 minutes later. And people are like, you're just sitting there. And I was like, don't you have stuff to do? I was like, yeah, in 20 minutes. When I start, I am taking a break and just giving myself that 20 minutes to just kind of relax and decompress after being in hellish traffic and running around all morning. I am much more productive throughout the entire day and much more efficient. So those little breaks you take for yourself are vital.
We have a couple questions in the chat.
Oh right, there's been a chat this entire
I want to know where
time.
Josh got
What
his
kind of,
fancy
okay, wait,
shoes.
but what kind of emoji are in the chat?
Unfortunately, no emojis.
We're judging you based on your emoji.
No gifts.
What
No
channel
nothing.
are we using for this? Is it
So-
ICQ?
John and Liam
Wow.
I forgot about that.
Haven't used it
Back
on
to
a show
topic,
yet,
guys,
but.
back to topic, guys.
MSN Messenger, yeah.
Yeah.
So Liam and John are wondering what the priority is of getting into the edit seat as an assistant, or even if it is a priority to become an editor.
Not everyone wants to.
Yeah, there's two
Mm.
kinds. There's people who want to be career assistants.
Yeah.
And that's their path, and they like it and enjoy it, and that's what they see themselves doing. And there's people who want to come.
Okay, so in television at least, I think in features it takes a lot longer and you gotta take some different steps to get in the editing chair in features. But in television, you have to have an editor who's willing to support you. Cause if you wanna get bumped up that next season, your showrunner is gonna ask your editor's opinion if you're ready. So you need an editor who will be your champion, you need an editor who will, if they don't throw you scenes, hopefully they throw you scenes and your scenes get in the show. You need someone to give you feedback on your cuts. And first things first, your priority is you are hired as an assistant editor. You make sure you have all of your work done first.
And correctly, and,
Yeah, correctly. Like,
fast.
that is what you were hired to do. Now, if you have time, or you have to just practice on your own time, that's when you do it, because, it's just one of those skills, you just need practice. The more you practice, the better you're gonna get, and you need that feedback, and like I said, you're gonna need someone to be your champion. So if you're with an editor who is not supportive of that, I would suggest finding a different editor as soon as you can, without burning bridges, because people are very chatty in this business. And you just never know. I know people who were able to get bumped up fairly quickly, and other people it took them 10 years, and it was just a matter of the opportunities just didn't come along for them. They were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were ready for years, and they never got that opportunity. Other than being on a long-running series, working pilots, which are hellish hours, but that's a good opportunity to get brought on as an editor. If they really like you on the pilot, then they'll bring you on as a second or third editor on the show.
Yeah, so you're so good at answering these questions. Well, I think Monica said a lot of great things. But I feel like personally there's so many different ways you could do it. There's so many different things, like you definitely need a champion. You need someone to afford you that opportunity. I personally have always felt working with a lot of different people is not a bad thing. I know that sometimes you think, oh, well, if I keep working on this show or with these folks, something will happen. And that is possible. But I feel like for me it's always been diversifying, and that's why I wanted to try and get into television after doing features, or try and do something different and learn more about the workflows or the way that the different editors work and things, just because it's never going to be to your detriment. You're just always going to learn something new regardless, right?
Yeah, I've worked with several different editors now in the last couple of years, and they all work differently. And there's all things that I could say I've stolen from them that I kind of want to bring into how I work. And there are some things I was like, it works for them, it doesn't work for me. And so you never know what you will learn. I agree with that. I've worked with so many different people, and I've learned from every show and every person I've worked with.
Actually, touching on what Monica said too, yeah, I find developing your process as an editor, which is a completely different process as an assistant editor. And of course, I'm saying this from the perspective of an assistant editor. I'm not an editor yet. I'm trying to be, so I'm trying to answer that question for myself. But
I think we're all there.
yeah, but in fairness, I think therein lies the value of being an assistant editor for a while, not being too impatient to become an editor right away, is you will learn a lot of tricks from a lot of people who do things different ways, and you're going to find some things that do work, some things that don't work. There is a pretty pervasive mentality that I've heard lately, which is that assistant editing is not a road to editing, you just need to edit, and I could not disagree with that more, because that completely disregards the experience of these editors who've done this for a long time for very specific reasons and who have developed good habits over time. And working that way can cause you to develop bad habits that you don't even realize are bad habits, because if you're always working on your own, then it never mattered. And not to say that your projects you work on your own don't matter, but when you're working by yourself, it's fine that you can find anything anywhere because you know how it is. That is completely unacceptable on a show when there's other people who need to work with a project together. It's important. I have an AP friend who always insisted that the projects be, as he called it, bus safe. Bus safe meant if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, will the next guy be able to sit in and make it work? You know, and so I think therein lies the value of what Josh was touching on with diversifying. Is again, you're gonna find what you did a year ago. You're gonna go, wow, that was completely wrong. I'm gonna do this, you know, and you know, to say wrong, nothing's right or wrong, but you will consistently be making it better by working that way.
And the more editors you work with, the more people they know, the more circles.
Yeah.
And Facebook messaging, the whole LinkedIn, that's all cool. But when the guy can say, I worked with them, they're great. There's no replacement for that. So you kind of want a lot of people who can say that.
Yeah, and once I got that initial first scripted assisting job, every other job afterwards has been through someone who I worked with on the show recommended me for the next show. And that's happened with the show after that, and it happened with the show after that. And so that's how I've been able to work consistently, because we were like, oh, I'm going to totally recommend you for this other job I heard about. And that's how I've been able to get jobs consistently.
I guess I can say that I am not really assisting anymore. Ever since
Ready to reevaluate the name of the panel.
I know. After the OA in the end of October, I decided, just like when we left reality. I don't know. Were you on reality?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. When we left reality, it was kind of like I said. It's an internal decision. Again, I felt like, you know what? It's time. I know enough people, and you know, I saved a lot of money on the OA, so I'm gonna stop and I'm just gonna focus on cutting. So I've been cutting an indie feature now, like just a fix-it job where other people have cut it and I'm recutting it and doing the final touches. And then there'll be another indie that I'll be doing from scratch. You know, not for the money, for the credit and experience and the chops, and that's so when season 2 comes around, I can say, hey, I've got all this editing experience now. So
Yeah, that's great if you can do that, but reality too, like I couldn't do that. I have to make money, I provide all the medical benefits for my family.
No, totally.
But so,
Yeah, it's
when
not
you
the
make
only
that
way.
kind of decision, like she said, she saved up a lot of money to do that, so she planned for that.
Yeah.
And so that avenue might not be open to everyone, but that is a great avenue to go.
But this is the beauty of this whole industry is that, and post-production, editing is such a puzzle, and there's no correct way to cut anything, or there's no one correct way. There's so many different ways to make something work, and that, you sort of have to think about everything in this industry as that. So what works for Sharon doesn't work for Monica, what works for Monica doesn't work for me, but it might work for the both of us, and it's this idea that it's kind of great to know that you can come to so many different panels and everyone's going to say something completely different, but you'll be able to
There is
like
no one right way.
yeah, and there's no exactly, or there are no wrong ways. Well, there is a wrong way.
Actually, I always find, and it always irritates me, that whenever we have nerdy editing discussions with wherever, and they're like, oh yeah, you never cut something like that. I'm like, really? Never? Never gonna cut something like in that specific technique? Okay, you're limiting yourself that way, because you never know.
It's true.
You never know when some technique that everyone's like, no, that'll be terrible, and it just works for that project. So I say, keep an open mind.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's turning off your assistant editor brain when you're about to cut, and turning on your creative brain. 'Cause it's a whole different skill set that you have to get to work those muscles, you know.
Well, and I think being in the room just as an assistant really helps. Like, I love when my editor can bring me in the room and I can sit there and see how he or she processes certain things, or why did you do that, or just ask questions and be open to mentoring. I think that's something that I want to see more of in the industry. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, taking apart
Yes.
scenes together.
Oh, my editors, I'm always like, when I want a break, I'll like walk in the room, they're like, oh, what's up? I'm like, nothing, I need a break, and I'll just plop on the couch, and they're like, all right, and I just sit and watch them work. So I've always been welcome in their cutting rooms, just to kind of relax. And it's when they're working by themselves, like I don't just do that.
Hey, director.
I brought some cheesy crackers, guys.
It is nice, whenever you can inject those conversations that veer away from the standard editor to assistant editor relationship, which is, editor needs sound effects. Hey, what's that sound effect? But if you can really kind of, like Monica says, get in there and start talking about structure and coverage and, the things that editors would talk, or the things that the editor would talk with their director or producer, so you can get you thinking as an editor is going to be a valuable thing.
And when you see dailies and then you see the scene cut completely different or reworked or reordered or broken up, and like, ask them, why did you do that? Why did you do this? Why did you put this part from the end here? And then they'll explain, and that really helps you start thinking critically about your own student short film that you're cutting, or maybe I can split up this scene and maybe I can intercut these two scenes to work together. I'm doing that right now with this indie film, and it's just so insane. It's like a whole different part of my brain that I'm using now, creative thinking of the footage. I'm so used to the technical. Oh, is it in sync? Is the slate? Now I'm actually applying all the stuff I learned from all the editors I worked with.
That's editing. It really is, though. No, I had this moment on Friday. So we're in the director's cut for the film that I'm assisting on right now, and the editor, there was a scene, and she cut it the way that it was scripted, which is the way that you would do it initially for that first assembly, right? And then the director came in, and he's like, "No, actually, I want it to be like this," and essentially not how they shot it. And she recut the scene and used little bits and pieces of things that were in the way they weren't intended to, in the way they weren't shot, and she played it back, and we watched it, and I said, yeah, now I really get this from the scene, and that's what editing is. It's this moment where you're taking something that maybe wasn't intended to be used in such a way, and making the magic work, and we both sort of said, like, yeah.
Oh, totally.
And sometimes it doesn't work, but you can try, and that's what you're finding your way through the material.
On the OA, there was a big thing that happens in the end, and then we decided much later in post that we want to tease it with the sort of nightmare. But it wasn't scripted, it wasn't shot. I had to go through the footage of the big thing that happens, and so I ended up using like swish pans of like from before the camera actually settles, before action, to build a little montage of things to kind of tease it, and it really worked, and that's in the show now. And it's like this nightmare that we never scripted, was never shot, all from bits and pieces that are found footage that the assistant editor threw together, and the editor polished after. But,
Hey, take credit where credit is due. Well, we got some more questions in the chat, it seems like. I'm actually not on my cell phone, I promise. I'm getting questions. So Jennifer from the chat says, is it frustrating when you, as the assistant editor, work with editors who don't have assistant experience?
No.
What? Oh, I was gonna straight up say yes, because
I only get frustrated if, they're jackasses.
if they're
So-
stubborn, if they're not listening.
I think, well, to answer the question, I think my answer to the question is yes, because because with anything, it's like, if there's no fundamental understanding of your job, then the expectation has changed, and so it's this kind of struggle to have your boss understand the intricacies of something that they shouldn't really have to care about. They don't need to know what your job entails, but communicating to them that, oh right, when you ask me to do X, it's going to take me this amount of time, and having them understand that is really, that's where the frustration draws from. But it's not frustrating in the sense that it's unworkable. I mean,
It's not like it's like not the negative, but the positive. When you do get an editor who used to be an assist, that's awesome. You like flow. It's great. When you don't get an editor like that, it's okay. It's not terrible.
You just work with them in a different way.
It's just nicer when they were assistant editors.
Every editor I've worked with has been an assistant, and there are certain things, they just don't understand new workflows, and it usually just like really impresses them when they see how the workflows have changed and how much faster and easier I can do certain things. They're like, oh my God, what? And I usually end up like teaching them things. Because they just want to know, because they're fascinated and they're nerds.
It's
So
fun to be the magician.
Yeah, I haven't worked with an editor who was just completely oblivious to like the amount of work I needed to do. I've always worked with editors who get it.
Yeah, I've also never worked with an editor who's never been an assistant. I've worked with editors who weren't assistants very long. Sometimes I think that was to their detriment. But it's never really been much of a problem in the sense of kind of like what Monica was saying is, as long as they're not jackasses, as long as they're not arrogant about it, as long as I can say, okay, well, for example, if it's a big visual effects heavy show, we're going to have to do a few things to accommodate the visual effects workflow to make sure we don't lose track of stuff. Are you cool with that? And and if they are, if they can kind of take a little bit of advice as well, it'll be fine. There's always going to be, I find one of the more common things what Monica was touching on is you'll have some editors who have been doing this for many years, they've been working on film, and the last time they assisted, the Avid probably didn't even exist, or barely did. And so there's always a little bit of accommodation that needs to get done to keep things organized, and again, sometimes you'll work with an editor who's very set in their ways and will not budge at all, and in that case, it can be very difficult to try to keep a project organized, and sometimes you'll work with an editor who will go, yeah, I can work that way, and then you can get things more organized. Things like track assignments, stuff like that, So, is it frustrating? Well, I mean, working on any project that has poor organization, especially poor organization that's easily solvable, it's frustrating. And I promise it'll happen to you in your career, so just kind of got to roll with it.
kind of like jumping off of what you were saying about being the magician. I feel like there's always some little trick that you can have as an assistant, but something that I was told really early on is managing expectations. So when someone says, do this do this task and they sort of either don't know how long that task will take or it's not a big rush or whatever, and there's sort of this open-ended question, just because you can accomplish it in 30 seconds doesn't mean you should. Because if you, like let's say if you get a scene to do sound work for, and you do it really quickly, then what you've now said to the editor is, oh yeah, I can just bang out this sound work super fast. And what you might end up later down the line getting a ton of sound work, and they're thinking, oh, you can do all of this stuff super quick, and then you've kind of got yourself into a corner. And it kind of it's just managing expectations. So you need to kind of set those guidelines. And I also feel like build in that buffer time of saying, oh, it's going to take me 45 minutes, even if you can do it in 20. Do it in 20, deliver it in 20, and then they're like, oh, this is great, you did it in 20 minutes and you told me it was going to be 45. But then there are times when you say 45 and it takes 50, and that's okay.
And I mean, you have to build in the time to check your work.
Yeah.
Because doing it fast is not good at all if it's not done well. And I've had a lot of editors, especially with sound work, a lot of editors really, hate, really, there's no other word for it, hate bad sound work. And it was done, they don't care that it was done fast because it doesn't work for them at all, and they're going to kick it back to you anyway, and you're going to have to redo it, and it's going to take longer than what we would have done if you would have spent the right amount of time actually listening to what the scene is about. I worked on a show for a bit where I had an editor after dailies do sound work. After dailies, he cut a scene, and he tossed it back to me to do sound work. And I read the script. I read the script, and then the script called for the sound of a door closing. An actor was reacting to it, but it wasn't shot, obviously. So I kick it back to him, and guess what? The sound effect of the door closing was there. And he came to me all beaming with excitement, like I just did the, unthinkable, amazing thing, and it was because I put that sound effect door in, because he didn't, without him asking for it, because I read the script.
Yeah.
So take the extra time. Don't be too fast about it. But and it's really important to check your work. Make sure you're doing quality work.
And I feel like on that same note, over delivering, so a lot of times for me, I guess I've been in situations where they haven't recorded footsteps, and the scene is someone wandering through somewhere, and you don't hear the footfalls.
Those are always
Oh my
fun.
God. The
Yeah.
footsteps.
But I will always cover those footsteps until someone says, don't bother covering the footsteps. And it happened on this show I'm on where I kept doing footsteps, and I was like, this is really tedious, but I have to do it because the scene doesn't play without it. And the editor was really appreciative. And then it got to a moment, and she said, don't worry about doing the footsteps in this scene. And I was like, yes, fine. But it's this idea where it's like, so sound work especially is something you're going to have to do a lot, and it's so subjective that you should do more than you think you have to do, because it's so much easier for an editor to say, oh yeah, get rid of this stuff, than, oh, no, I really want to hear more of whatever isn't in there.
Also touching on what you mentioned with footsteps, since that's such a specific one, I'm just going to offer that every single sound library that has footsteps sucks. And to that effect, I think one of the best pieces of advice an assistant editor gave me is he told me to just buy a hand recorder. I got a micro track. They don't make it anymore, but you can get like a Zoom recorder. I find one thing with sound effects is sometimes you're spending 20 minutes looking for that one sound effect because everyone doesn't work, and sometimes it's faster to just go and then throw it in the cut. I do it all the time. It works. Yeah.
It's really hard
fun
to
little
find
trick.
good scraping sounds.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of scrapes,
Did
guys.
banging on files. Yeah. It's
Oh,
fun.
that's so the jumping off of all that stuff though. But like, I don't know if you, I presume that you guys do, because I do. Is I take everything I can from other assistants, from shows that I've worked
But
on.
he doesn't break licensing agreements.
Yeah.
Copyright.
This is true, but I was lucky enough to one of the editors I worked for and other assistants I worked for were like, oh, let's swap sound effects libraries. Here's the, do you have any soundtracks or scores or anything that you're using for temp and stuff? And you just get yourself a 6 terabyte hard drive and start filling
The show
that
doesn't
sucker up.
provide that stuff. You have,
Yeah.
the editorial teams bring that in on their own drives.
Yeah. And
Extra points if it's already imported as Avid Media with bins.
Everyone uses Sicario too for some reason.
and just hang on to that stuff, and so that you can take it from show to show, and it keeps expanding, and you'll never, like you guys were saying, archiving even paperwork and workflows from other shows. You can do the same with your sound effects. I have a lot of scrapes if you guys need scrapes. I got metal scrapes, I got
Richard's
wood on metal.
Richard's Sound Archive.
Oh yeah, you should just make your own library, Richard.
They're copyrighted, you can't have them.
It'll be like a Richard voice watermark over them.
Really low in the mix.
Just Richard Sanchez sound.
I thought you were gonna do like a DJ call, like Richard Sanchez on the track.
It's the mustache that makes it sound unique.
So like the echo, exclusive.
Like the Pond 5 sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we touched on it a little bit, but talking about mental health in your edit bay. I know we've talked about it in the past with BCP West. They had a panel about mental illness specifically, but I just kind of wanted to talk about specifically for assistant editors, because it's such a different job. It's such a specific skill set, I guess is the better word to say it. I have PTSD and depression, so it's sometimes really hard to stay focused and not get distracted. So is there anything that you guys use to mitigate that?
Take breaks. No, seriously,
Get
that's, I think there's a sense of trying to take the bull by the horns, in the sense of, because I used to be very much one of those, the show came first every time, and it always came before my health, it came before my family, and your physical health and your mental health are so tied to each other that if your body is physically exhausted all the time, how will your mental health ever possibly keep up? And you're not selfish for going to the doctor or going to the dentist, or it can be so stressful to think about the average errands that we all have from time to time, that you go, I can't get this done because I have to work and I have to walk in your editor's room and go, I got an errand, I'll be back in 30 minutes, it'll be fine. And I promise you 9 times out of 10, they don't care, it'll be fine.
I use my lunch hour to go get my kid from school and take him to after school care, and then I go back to work. Something I have to do.
It's awesome when you work with supervisors who care about you and care about your well-being,
Shout out to all those supervisors that care.
Exactly.
It's true.
No.
It is,
I
yeah.
had a post supervisor, in the midst of the insanity, she was like, tonight, you're going home and you're having a nice dinner with your boyfriend. You're not staying late. And that was awesome. It really makes the difference. It really saves your insanity. Sometimes you just need to go home at a reasonable hour and, be with your significant other or your family, or do whatever you gotta do. But if you don't have a supervisor who cares,
Or a significant other.
then you Netflix and chill.
I don't have a boyfriend, but thanks.
But yeah. If she didn't care, then I would say,
Oh, okay.
you're not letting me come home and see the boyfriend I don't have. Then like they said, you have to kind of do it on your own and take your own breaks and kind of command the time for your sanity. You can't overdo it, and you have to take the situation of your show into consideration, but your mental health is first and foremost. I mean, the worst thing is if you're too tired and you get in a car accident, and then they're screwed anyways, right? So
I'll share this much with you.
Is my mic off? Now it's back on. Actually, I did, touching on that, with mental health, I once worked a show, I was living in Arcadia at the time and commuting to Santa Monica, and I was working the night shift, and I fell asleep at the wheel on the 10, and I woke up on the 710, and I don't know how I'm still alive, and that's a true story. So take time for yourself, you know, and it's one of those things. The problem is it's so easy to say, you know, when this happens to someone else, you know, you always feel like you're mentally alert for the first 10 minutes that you perform a task, but when that task, like driving home, that might take an hour, you know, if it's going to put yourself in physical danger, I mean, that's when you need to stop. And again, also as far as your physical health being tied into your mental health too, I'm totally a nerd, but I got one of those desk ellipticals, and actually like taking like 10 minutes at the end of your lunch break just to kind of do that for a little bit. For me, like you talk about avoiding distraction, that actually kind of helps keep my mind focused, because you finish lunch, you're coming down. But you know, again, I think just if you've fallen into the mantra of the film comes first, no, it doesn't. Your mental health, your physical health, you come first. So try to get yourself in the mentality again of you're not selfish for thinking of yourself.
I've worked on shows where they know we were working really long hours and really late, and if they thought we were gonna have to be there really late, they're like, take an Uber home, show will pay for it, we'll reimburse you. And so, you know, there are shows that they know we have deadlines, they know we're gonna be there late, and they don't want us driving home.
I think it tends to be, if you're really honest about needing the break and why you need the break, or just talking about it, I think that helps me, at least, to set aside the seriousness of it all. Because sometimes you get sucked into that whole, the film comes first kind of mentality, and not everybody is in your headspace. So you kind of have to be honest and open about it, how it's affecting you, specifically.
If you were quiet about being very fatigued, it's not going to help anyone if you end up getting in a car crash. If you were brave throughout the whole thing up until then. So you still have to look out for you and voice it, because no one's going to look out for you more than you will. So
Yeah, just ask, I would say. I mean, just be honest with yourself. I've been in situations where I know at the end of the day that there's still X task that needs to get done, and maybe it doesn't need to be done, and maybe it needs to be done by the morning, but I know I'm so burned out that I'm not going to do a good job on it, and I'm honest with myself about that, and in a situation I'll just say, okay, I'm going to go home and I will finish this. I'll come in early the next morning instead of burning out trying to get something done the night of and doing a poor job of it. I've already talked about hotline bling as a thing that helps me. And I'm 100% serious about that. I mean, the music helps me a lot to just keep myself, whether it's focused or to pep up in a situation where I need a little boost. Having a standing desk and sitting down sometimes too, and that has really helped me a lot. My little brother got me this cube.
I was looking into that
Yeah,
yesterday.
so I didn't know these things existed. It's called like a fidget cube. And I'm sure you can find them on Amazon, because that's where he found this. But it's just got a bunch of little things on it, like this little joystick and a little switch or something. And it's really helped me in the last 2 weeks that I've had it, just to kind of have something to just mess around with. In those moments when I'm just kind of thinking about how to fix a problem, or waiting for my Avid to come back when it's crashed, or something like that. That's really helpful for me. But it's like these guys were saying too, it's just asking when, feeling like you do come first. Like, health is more important than anything else. Your mental health, your physical health, and just feeling comfortable and knowing yourself when you need to take those breaks.
Yeah, what I do just to stay sane, I actually have pictures that usually I buy from comic artists at like Comic-Con and WonderCon, just all throughout my office, and I have, you know, pictures of my family. I have toys all over like my shelf. I actually have like this whole different set of like Legos that my editor constantly comes in and plays with. Like, he'll come in and he's like, oh, hey Monica, I have a question. Oh. And then it's like the next 5 minutes he'll just be fiddling with the Legos. I was like, did you actually come in here for a question? He's like, oh yeah, just give me a minute. And she was playing with my Legos.
I bought my editor a punching bag.
Yeah.
Because
But,
he, for when he gets really frustrated with.
Oh yeah, I've purchased stress balls for editors in the past. which
Yeah,
is-
and also I have a balance board that I balance on, and what I'll do when I'm not using it, I just kind of have it near my door. And every time someone comes in, they're like, what is this? They're like, this is kind of fun. And it's not just my editor, it's like my co-producer, whoever, they come in. And part of just mental health is, you need to be surrounded by, we're all in the same boat. And so everyone's struggling with it. And so the fact that we could all kind of relax for a second together, like that helps. If you're on a show where you don't like any of the people, that's just gonna make it so much worse. But if you guys are able to just kind of laugh together, there's a lot of delirious giggling going on. That really helps you survive it, because you're all in it together, you're a team.
Oh, I have a dog. His name is Shuffle, and he's awesome. And I can bring him to work, which is great. And it doesn't happen every single job you're on. But people do that with him, where they'll come into my room. There are people who work on our floor that don't know who I am, but they know Shuffle, and they come in like, oh, it's Shuffle, and they pet him. And he brings such joy to me, to my girlfriend, to the people that I work with. And if I get really stressed out, I just look at him and he's like, what are you so mad about? And that's
I have
really...
the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Xander's a little lucky because he's a service dog, so he can kind of come and sometimes when my editor comes in and it's stressed, because he's trained to detect my stress, he'll rub up against my editor's legs and it's just like, it's okay, guys. I can do this all day. Just pets, it's okay. We're all going to be okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I think it's time to wrap up, right? Yes. So my last question this is a fun question. If the doctor
Final
showed
round.
up in the TARDIS and he gave you this one opportunity to just go back and tell your younger assistant editor self, what advice would you give them?
Go into real estate.
End of panel.
I don't want to end it on such a single note. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love it. I think my advice to my younger self would have been what I touched on earlier: is take care of yourself. It's okay.
All right, I'll go. I'd say, don't let fear control you. We're all gonna fail, we're all gonna stumble, we're all gonna fall on our faces, we're all gonna make mistakes. That's how you learn. So, don't be afraid to go up to someone, or an editor, or us, or whoever, because you're afraid we might reject you. Guess what? If you don't come up to us, it doesn't matter, because you never made that connection. Maybe something good will come out of it. It's same with your work. I was terrified when I first got into scripted, even though I'd been in the business for a long time. I was taking a step back to assisting, and I didn't know the workflows, and I was afraid I was going to screw up, I was going to fail, and I ended up being the one who they gave all their extra projects to, because they knew I was capable of it. You don't know what you're capable of, and you will make mistakes, and it will suck for a little bit, and then if you're smart, you'll learn from it and get that all the better for it. So that's my advice. Don't let fear control you and your decisions.
I would say the business that you're in is you're freelance. No one's gonna look at your progress and then call you into their office and say, oh, you worked so hard, here's a raise, here's a promotion. Here's a genre change. Here you can go into scripted now. You can edit now. Congratulations. And no one will bump you up. It's up to you. It's up to your, perseverance, determination, and your decision when to do it. You have to push yourself. That's what I would tell myself.
Every editor I work with, when I first meet them, I make it very clear I want to cut. Because if they don't know that about me, why would they help me out? I make it very clear that's where I want to be.
I would say ask. Just, if you don't know, ask. If you want to know, ask. State your intentions. Say the things that, I don't know, make your intentions known, because no one's going to want to know if you want to cut if you don't say that. No one's going to know that you don't know how to do X if you don't ask them how to do it. Be confident in your abilities and find a theme song. I seriously,
What did you do before Hotline Bling?
I'll tell you right now, every interview that I've ever driven to, I always listen to Jay-Z's The Blueprint, because the first couple of tracks on that album just get me really confident and excited about what I'm about to go do. And there's definitely music that does that for you, for everybody, I hope, and if not, I can help you with that. But that is something that I do every interview. When I came out here and I was trying to get internships, I would throw on The Blueprint, I would drive to that interview, and I would kill it, because it would just get me so excited. And if you have something like that for you, and if you don't find it, if you have it, use it, because that confidence is contagious, and people feed off of that and will be receptive to it. So, find your hotline bling, everybody.
I listen to Pandora stations.
Make up your mind.
All right, I think we have a couple minutes for some questions from the room. Do we have a microphone or?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So
Project.
yeah, I can
Really
take
loud.
Yeah, we can run
Pass.
that, no?
Oh
Don't
wait,
bite.
no,
Pause.
it's attached. I'm tethered.
Well,
We can have them come up here.
Yeah, that works.
Great song, come up.
Come on now.
I'm gonna call on someone because I know some of you.
We can read their names.
I know you have a question.
Well, I was writing down some things.
Ask.
Just repeat
Ask.
it.
This is the
See,
danger of
ask. This
actually
is the
following
thing.
up with me. Isabel followed up with me. She shadowed me, and now I called her out in the middle of everyone.
Yeah. It's really cool though, 'cause I've never done a lot. I guess my question is, I'm really into health stuff, and so when you guys keep saying breaks, how long are their breaks? How often are they? I mean, I guess they depend on the person, but
I'd say if it's really stressful, take a good 15-minute walk. Get out of the building, get some air. Sometimes I'll take a lot of mini breaks because I was like, okay, I just need a short break. I don't need to be gone for 20 minutes, and maybe I'll just wander through the halls or wander the kitchen for five minutes, or maybe I'll just go see who's in the kitchen, chat them up for 10 minutes, and I'll go back to work. And I'm much more productive that way because I'm able to refocus.
More questions?
Yeah. I was just wondering, as a person that's editing right now that is looking to do union work, and knowing that assistant editing is kind of the path into that.
It's one path. I
Yes.
do have friends who have
Right.
done other things, but it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
You have to
So-
know the right people.
Yeah, so, I mean, seeing that as a path that I can take, and knowing that you Monica, were an editor and then took a step back, what kind of things did you do to kind of prepare yourself to take that step back, and knowing that you didn't know the workflows?
How are your technical skills? Did you retain them?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I was assistant editing at one point, not union, but.
Well, the union thing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
EDL's an EDL.
Right, exactly. And I've done a few different things, like short little assistant stints doing, prepping for online work and stuff. So I have retained some of that, but I'm sure there are things that I don't know.
There are always things you don't know, so my suggestion is retain those technical skills. Build on them.
Did you shadow somebody? Did you go?
I
into
shadowed-
AUV?
I did shadow people when the opportunities came up. I was always constantly working too, so it was kind of hard. But, I became friends with several assistants and they let me shadow them right before I got my, or actually right after I got hired for that first job. I had several friends. I called them up and was like, okay, I really need to shadow you. I'm starting and I don't know what I'm gonna be doing. I don't know what to expect. And they're like, okay, no problem. And they helped me out. I think the timing worked out. The union had an assistant editing seminar and I immediately signed up for it. And so I just reached out to people and shadowed them. And the seminar was helpful, but it's really helpful to actually get in people's rooms and see what they do in the practical sense. And then you could like see their binders, see what they have to go through. And the truth of it is, you won't really get it until you start the job, but you just need to convince an editor that you're capable of it.
Right.
And they want to see someone who's trying. And so, but the big thing is, they want someone who will be able to do their sound work. Don't expect to cut right away, because they're not hiring you to cut, they're hiring you to be the assistant. And you need to make sure, if someone asks you for a quick time and you're like, okay, what are the specs, and they spit out a bunch of things at you, you need to be able to translate that into an output
Sure.
without having your hand held. So those technical skills are vital. And like a big thing for the editors is just the sound work. And a key thing, especially for people who were editing and trying to get back, is ego. I had to interview some people when I had to leave Supergirl because I was starting on Preacher mid-season, and they knew about that when they hired me, so it was like, all good. So I was actually in on the interviews, and you know, we had a couple people who were editors come in, and my editor just didn't like it right away, because you could tell that ego was there, and it's like, no, I don't want someone questioning me, I want someone to do the job as the assistant. And, you know, so you have to kind of check that, recognize how you communicate, the, you know, nonverbal communication is like, get your ego in check. They want someone who's gonna be enthusiastic to be their assistant and make them look good. So, and you may not realize it, you know, you'll have to be very conscious of how you come off, because they're gonna be hesitant about ego, I think is the biggest hurdle. They're worried about that.
I also recommend a lot of assistant editor Facebook groups to keep in touch with the new tech and the new developments and things that you'll have to deal with later as an assistant editor yourself. Also, a lot of going to mixers and socializing and assistant editor meetups and stuff like that to meet more people who are assisting on scripted television. And a lot of jobs get passed around. Oh, I'm not available for this, maybe you should do that. So a lot of mingling, socializing.
And also, one thing just to keep in mind, and I'm going to contradict myself immediately, is when you're ready, don't basically just jump in, because as far as when you're ready, you're never really going to feel ready. You kind of just need to jump in and embrace it, and it is what it is. You know, Monica touched upon it earlier, which is you will make mistakes, and that's okay, but as long as you embrace it fully, you know. Especially the idea of technical skills, one of my absolute pet peeves, nothing irks me more, is hearing someone say, I'm not a techie person, only because that isn't a statement of fact, that's an excuse, because being techie is simply a matter of touching things until they work. Seriously, you know, just trying stuff out. That's how that's how anybody got techie is tried stuff out. Well, you know, that might get me in trouble with some
And I have a lot of very techie friends. When I can't figure something out because it's just like really deep tech knowledge, they're one text away.
I have a friend, his name is Google. I mean, how many times have like something has been going on, or an editor will ask me to make the Avid do something that I've never made it do before, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go check into that, and I go back in my room and I Google it, and I'm like, oh yeah, here it is, and then I figure it out, and then I go back and I tell them, and there's no shame in that. Like, this is using your resources. I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, and I would say never use the excuse, like, oh, you know, I'm not really good at that, so maybe I should do this instead. It's like, no. You get good by doing it. So figure it out.
Right, yeah, it's okay to say I don't know.
Most of our job is figuring it out.
Yeah. No, that's
We
true.
are thrown so many fires every day, multiple times a day, and we just gotta figure it out.
And that's editing.
All right, we got time for one more quick question. Yes, over there.
I'm an editor. I'm an actor, and I'm getting some directing. What can we do as actors and directors to make your jobs more streamlined and easier?
Finish
Paperwork. Seriously.
Wait, as a director and actor?
Yeah.
All right, let me tell you right now.
Oh boy.
Whether you're the actor or the director, let the actor finish their thought
Yes.
at the end of a take.
Oh my God, yes.
Because guess what? You know how many times they're like, directors, cut camera, and it's like, no, the actor's not done yet. God damn you.
Or an actor stepping
Let
on
them
another
finish
actor.
their damn thought. Give them a couple seconds, because you never know when you just might need that emotional moment, and it's gone because you said cut and you cut camera. Interrupted the actor. Drives me crazy.
I don't know, man. Like, in all reality, I knew going into this that my job is to solve the puzzle. So I'm gonna fix it. I'll fix it, man. Like, don't worry about it. Shoot more, not less. And just do your job, and then and give us good stuff. I mean, you're going to. This is the thing. It's like, I knew getting into post-production, you're the last people to touch the film. You're an integral part of the process, but stuff happens on set that goes wrong. I mean, and you're fixing issues. Somebody forgot to do whatever, didn't move this thing, or somebody drank too much of their water, and now it's the discontinuity, whatever. I mean, that's kind of our occupational hazard, is fixing those problems. Right?
Yeah, and I would say also, another thing, don't interrupt actors' lines, because you never know when we may need that line. And if the director's talking over it, it's just like, I can't use that now. And that was the perfect delivery that we needed for the scene. So.
Yeah, it's as an actor, if I know, I mean, there's so much that you're thinking about while you're acting, but if you really want to know what would be great for editors and assistant editors is if you could try to keep doing the same things in the same way in different setups, you know, like if you're sitting down, try to sit down the same way, or
You're asking for too much.
you know, I think Lori Coleman was talking the other week about that. Like an actor was asking the same question, and it's like she's seen that in wide shots, the actor will sit down in a certain way, and then in the close-ups, they're aware that it's them, so they'll sit down all nice and like, you know, like not realistic. And then it's a nightmare to cut because like they were slouching or whatever earlier. So I mean, yes, you have all this acting stuff to do, but you know, if you want to throw a thought at like trying to continue what you did before, that would be awesome.
And I could say a lot of shows, and it's especially the shows that kind of have the more cinematic feel, they'll use the wide shots more. That's what they want. It feels bigger. And the actors don't always bring it until they're close-ups, which is a problem because we want to be in the wide. So just make sure the actors are always bringing it. And, you know, depending on the style of the show. Some shows really like the close-ups, so you won't use wides that much. I've worked on shows, they really like those wides, and the actors were being a little sleepy. Because they're like, oh, it's a wide shot, doesn't matter. And, well, it does matter.
It's in 4K.
It's 4K, now it's a close-up because you pushed it in.
That was great, wasn't it?
It's a whole wave of laughter.
All right, I think that's it. Oh, Kylie's got something to say.
Thank you guys so much for being on this panel. This was great, right?
You say that to all your
Thank you, Kylie, for having us.
Yeah.
Of course. And I just want to remind everyone that this panel came out of the community asking for it. We did one in New York last week, and then we were like, we're going to do that in LA too. So please get on the
one in New York.
It's going to be online. You can watch it.
Oh.
Because we are
I would
about
have
free
accepted a
and
trip to New York.
accessible.
Would you guys have accepted it?
I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
But we are non
Let's request it from the community.
So if you have something you want to see, just go in the Facebook group or ask one of us and say, hey, I want to see a panel on this. And chances are we're going to say, hey, that's a really good idea. Who do we know? And then suddenly we're all here on a Saturday evening doing this. So So also, go to our meetup on March 18th at St. Felix. It's gonna be really great, and it's still happy hour from 6 to 8, I think. Yeah. It is always fun. It starts at 6, goes till 9 or whenever, probably, it always goes late. And that's all. Thank you guys so much for coming.